Hypocrisy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. Joining me from all the way across the disc to the underside, surprising he hasn't fallen off yet, my good friend Elijah Schaffer. How you doing, man?
Yeah, you just said your name is Nigger Rekieta? That's how you pronounced it. That sounded,
Oh, wait, it's February's over.
Nigger Rekieta?
I forgot February's over. Sorry. My name is Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law. Yeah. I was slurring it for all of February. I don't know why.
Hey, everybody. I might steal your bike. Welcome to the show. Good to see you, man. I'm happy to be here, and I still sound like this, so.
You do. You still sound like that.
Yeah, I guess who's on the show down there? He's in the studio with me. We just got done with our show. This is a good friend of mine, co-host of the show on Friday nights in the U.S. Have you ever met Ben, Australia Talk?
I have not met him, I don't think. Or have I? Have I met you? Oh, shit.
No, we're yet to meet Nick, but
thank God.
It's brilliant to be here with you, mate. A pleasure to be here with you. G'day, mate. I followed you quite closely during the whole Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial, of course. We had their two dogs here in the country that were captured by the Australian government, and they had to pay some fines. Otherwise, those dogs were going to be terminated. Unless they did the right thing.
Wait, so they were going to be Did you say they were going to be terminated?
Yeah, the government threatened that unless they showed up and did the right things and played ball with the government requirements, attending court, etc.
Yeah.
The dogs, I think they were called Pistol and Boo, or Boo and Pistol, or something like that. Amber's two dogs, the government was going to put an injection into
Weren't
them.
they called Harry and Meghan Markle or something like that? Wasn't that what they were called, the dogs? Fucking put them down. I'm sorry. I'm very confused right now. It's the heroin.
Well, I just like that Australia has this nice process where they're like, well, you got to come do this stuff and pay, like, do these fines and stuff like that, or we're going to put your dogs down. In the U.S., the cops just show up, knock on your door, and then they shoot your dog. It's like way faster. It's way more efficient.
Yeah, well, here in this country, our government doesn't operate that way, at least publicly. But
Very
they tried to make a
inefficient.
spectacle of it. Yeah, very inefficient. They tried to make a spectacle of it.
Correct.
The paparazzi was all about. Amber was widely discussed what she was wearing as she was appearing at court, and all that type of stuff was going on.
That's what
here.
I was talking about all the time, too. Because that's all I know about. I'm like, I know how women should dress for court. And the answer is they shouldn't.
Yeah, they should be naked. I was thinking about that with Fannie Willis. Didn't she have the Gorilla Grip pussy Bluetooth's name? Was that real or was that fake? That her Fannie Willis's Bluetooth name was Gorilla Grip pussy. Did you see that?
I didn't see
in the court docs. I'm pretty sure it did. Her Bluetooth name on her phone was Gorilla Grip pussy, and it was just like casually in the court docs. And I was just thinking, that woman's got a roast beef sandwich that's been sitting in the sun for a few days. It is rather disgusting. I'm not a female comic, so that's probably the last pussy reference I'll make in the next 10 minutes. But realistically speaking, out here in Australia, there's a few things. Kanye West's new wife, that oddly looks like Kim Kardashian, is Australian.
She is.
And she's
I don't
been
think she
naked
looks
recently,
good.
too. She's been naked, I'm saying. Like, people out here like to be.
Yeah.
You don't think she looks good?
I mean, she looks weird to me. Every time I see people, they're like, oh, she looks like Kim Kardashian. I'm like, I mean, kind of. Like, I get the idea, but she just looks odd to me. But I don't think I know people are going to shit on me for this. I don't think Kim Kardashian looks that good either. Like, I don't like the over accentuated ratios that the Kardashians have made super popular. That's not my thing. That's not the way I like women to look. So, and all women should do what I want. I mean, frankly, that's the moral of the story. By the way, the chat is correcting you, Elijah, for your misinformation. You January 6th denier or whatever. It was the Hannah Reid trial, the Rust Armorer. She was the one who had the Gorilla Grip pussy Bluetooth name.
Oh, so the thing was that that's why I was saying, I was wondering if it was mislabeled.
What, do you think they all look the same or something, Elijah?
Yeah, no, because
you can't differentiate between them.
Because that's why I was saying I don't know if that was real or fake or not, because somebody had put that up for the Fannie Willis thing and said this was her Bluetooth, and I couldn't find it, and I'm like, it had to have been a joke then. But I would like to believe it, because Fannie Willis, dude, the fact that your name is Ass Willis, but in a different name, that's your name, right?
And in Australia, a fanny is actually a pussy.
Yeah, so I was gonna say out here, it's that. And as someone in the chat already put out, we're already having the Elijah's a gay homo chat live, which I'm sure it's gonna get worse as we go on. They're like, no need for pussy comments when you're gay. Am I right, Elijah? Like, am I supposed to agree with you on that? Like, hell yeah, us fags, that's what we do. But I do know the fanny is a pussy out here, so it is very weird because the wording is different, right? And a cunt is a mate, so it's like you're having sex with the fanny, but you're not into anal, and your friend's the cunt. That's Australia.
It is Australia, but yeah, she's an interesting lady. I've
No
watched
wonder England got rid of all of you people.
only the good ones for stealing a loaf of bread. They sent them all here, but thankfully we were able to escape the British royal family, so it might have turned out all right for us all.
No, it's I have been completely out of commission the entire week. I woke up Monday around 1 p.m. So I have to take my kid to a thing at 7 in the morning every weekday. And so I woke up, took my kid to the thing, and then I go back home. And since I stream so late, typically I'm going to bed at 5 in the morning anyway. So I get a couple hour nap in. I wake up, I take my kid to the thing. I come home, and then I sleep again. So I slept, and then I was awoken at 1 p.m. I was still asleep, and my wife's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "What?" And she took my temp, and it was 106, and I was like, "That's probably bad." Like that's where you start dying. I don't know if you guys know that. So temp of 106, 107, and so they. My wife and some of our friends started like loading me up with ice packs and a bunch of meds to bring my fever down. And then I still had a fever on Tuesday. I'd kind of kicked the fever on Wednesday, but I just slept all day. Yesterday I felt pretty good. I was a little lethargic. And then today it's been kind of coming back, but I haven't been following any news, which really sucks because I really wanted to follow the Fannie Willis Wade stuff because it's so salacious and it's so obvious that it's just this incestuous, nepotistic relationship that they have. And they're like, no, why would you think that? It's like, well, I don't know. The guy's billing you insane amounts of money. He has no qualifications to do this type of investigation. Oh, and you're admittedly fucking him. Oh, and he bought you plane tickets, both like all these great destinations. You're like, well, I paid him back in cash. Like, oh, really? Did you? You just paid for half the vacation in cash. Did you carry that with you? Because I know if I carry a bunch of cash, I get stopped by TSA. And they're like, what's this for?
Yeah.
Like drugs. And they're like, well, that's not acceptable. And they take it away. So I know that she didn't pay for the vacation in cash like she says. She can't produce a single receipt for anything that she paid for in cash or withdrawing the cash. So I mean, she like had it bundled up and shoved in her prison wallet or something like that.
And her fanny.
All this stuff. Yeah, exactly.
And her Australian fanny.
No one believes you, woman. No one believes you, or they shouldn't. And it's clearly improper. The whole thing's been a fucking witch hunt from day one. So I really wanted to follow along with all this. And I love that Trump's like, here's my guy. He's got the cell phone records. Look at these cell phone records. Look at the heat map. The heat map, a little warmer than their bedroom, probably kind of cold in there, a little gross. But he comes in with the cell phone records out of nowhere and busts the whole thing open. And now the judge has to decide if they're disqualified, and they definitely should be disqualified. There's no reason that this, like the special prosecutor's office, should be separate from the district attorney. That's the whole purpose of having the special prosecutor, is to remove the political elements from that are at play, to give them flexibility to go to places that might be uncomfortable for a political office to go to. And that's been completely, not only has that been completely scrubbed over and completely murdered, it's been then twisted to this pay myself, Fannie Willis, pay myself scheme where she's writing checks to a guy who's then spending the money on her. It's like, disqualify the shit out of them. The whole prosecution's bogus anyway. But
it's a black woman. I mean, look.
She's you've color.
Yeah, but see, the thing is like, I want to summarize the news for you. So you've been out for a week. You sound a little nasally.
I have a
look
pounding
okay.
sinus headache right now, which I'm trying to wash away with Angel's Envy right now.
You're not helping the nose reference. Like, I just need a little nose cleared up. No, but I can summarize the week for you. Illegal aliens murdering and raping white women, black people just being themselves,
Gotta love them.
Jews everywhere.
Also love them and support every decision every Jew has ever made.
Yeah, me too.
Even the
running
one
people
Hitler
over
made.
in bulldozers, killing people, killing lots of people, and apparently having sex with P. Diddy, and meanwhile molesting and raping half the black men and Justin Bieber. So that's
Wait,
kind of like the week.
Hold on. Let's scroll back. Did you say something with the bulldozer killing a lot of people?
They zip tied some people's hands and then ran them over with bulldozers. This isn't the
Who
first
did
time they've
this?
done that. The Israel.
Oh God.
And they also, even CNN this week, it was funny. CNN and like the Biden administration had to go on the news. It was even in Australia here too. Like, hey, Israel gunning down hundreds of Palestinians trying to get food aid because the military, this is the real headline, they felt unsafe by the people gathering to pick up the aid. That's kind of serious because we call the Boston massacre the massacre when there was like 5 people killed. Yeah. And yet they're calling this a mistake or an incident when hundreds of people are gunned down trying to get food aid. That's basically the week. And that's why I think numbers are so low on Rumble and everywhere. It's like black people are just behaving like they do. And when I'm not talking about Americans who happen to have dark skin. Right? I'm talking about people, when this is people who think it's racist. I'm not talking about people who are, if you're dark skinned, you're melanated, you're an American, you're not acting a fool. But people who identify as black, you know what I mean? That's what I call, they're self-identifying black people.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. And also too, people say, oh, Zionists, you're anti-Semitic. No, most Zionists are actually Protestant Christians. So, you know, I'm just saying, these are the people in the world. It's
like
unironic.
Pat Robertson.
Yeah, but everyone's just being a hooligan. And, Karine Jean-Pierre blamed Republicans for why white women are getting killed by illegal aliens. So nothing, you haven't missed anything. Everything's just more fucking gay and retarded, so much to where I thought today, I was like, man, I should have a show called Gay and Retarded. Because sometimes I don't want to do it and you just get up and you go, it's still gay, it's still retarded. See you next week. You know what I mean?
That's a great YouTube short channel. Like every day that's it. Like, look, this shit's all gay and your stuff's all retarded. Still.
It still is. It's like check in and it's Friday and it's still gay and retarded. A little bit less than yesterday, but a lot still. Depending on where you are, it could be worse. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
And you're going to render libs of TikTok obsolete by formulating a channel like that. That's for sure.
Do we really need to talk about this stuff anymore? Do you know what I'm saying though? It's like, how was your week? Things were pretty gay, pretty retarded. Some things were gay and retarded. Some things were kind of gay and sort of retarded, but overall they were pretty much both, you know?
It's like a weather bulletin, almost a weather bulletin. You give the updates on how's the climate looking this week. What's the outlook for the week? On Monday, it's going to be gay, and on Tuesday, it'll be, gay and retarded, but,
This is why I like talking to you though, because I don't cover that stuff. Like I don't do the global news type stuff very often because I don't care. Like this sounds terrible. People are like, why don't you care about this global issue? And I'm like, well, because I got a family to feed and like Palestine isn't a part of my food chain. So it's not really important to me right now. So I don't usually cover that. So you're like, oh, it's all the same. That's always going on. I'm like, wow, this is wild. I can't believe this is going on right now. It's wild. So I'm just sitting here like, I'm like, is there a lawsuit? Like, because that's what I'm looking for. Like a lawsuit, or is Donald Trump involved in it? Because that's lately or is there a gun in the United States that's being threatened by a liberal state? Like, because that's all the stuff I've been talking about lately. Because there's so much around those topics that's more in my wheelhouse, and I never know like geopolitical conflict and stuff. I'm like, well, it sucks that people are dying. Like, I don't want that to happen, but I don't know why they're dying and if they deserve it or not. So I try to stay out of the commentary because I usually just piss people off. Because I'm like, Uyghurs, those are those white kids who dressed like black kids when I was in school.
I would have to say this. You are probably better off not covering that stuff because it's not financially profitable. Because no matter what you say on these issues, you'll never be right. All I can say is, look, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm about kicking all the people from that region out of our countries, the Muslims and the Zionists.
You're not anti-Semitic, but
No, let's kick them all out. I'm actually not invested in that war. I'm more invested in the Ukraine war, where you have Christians fighting against Christians, and you have an atheist Jewish guy running Ukraine that is literally sacrificing Christians against each other on the battlefield, hundreds of thousands of them and hundreds of billions of US dollars in a satanic holy war that is a human sacrifice going on in the East. But I don't really care what's going on in the Palestine region, Israel region. That doesn't really bother me. All I know is this week I was saying things got so bad that even the Biden administration had to like come out and say like, hey, we don't really support what these guys are doing anymore, even though we've given them billions of dollars, because these are war crimes and this is not looking good what's going on. And they've killed more people in like the first 3 months of this war, more innocent civilians than were killed in all of the Russia-Ukraine war. And so now they're just targeting, even Piers Morgan came out yesterday and was like, biggest Zionist out there was like, oh, wait a second. It looks like Israel might be fucking up the entire region, and it looks like they lied to us. And everyone's like, yeah,
Piers Morgan's like, look, there's Jews that I like, and then there's the rest of them, apparently.
Yeah, no, he literally goes, wait a second. It looks like the Jews just killed a bunch of fucking innocent people. And then think they might have been lying. And I'm like, next thing you know, Piers Morgan's going to have an episode like, did you know the CIA isn't just working on starting wars and interfering with elections in other countries? They actually might be doing things back home in America. You're like, good job, Piers.
No, they're not allowed to operate on U.S. soil. There's words on paper that says they can't.
They're not allowed. No, but that's what this week was kind of like, I think it was so fucked. People are so tired of it. Like, I don't want to talk about the war in Israel. I don't want to talk about the war in Ukraine. I don't want to talk about New York and California. What I really want to talk about today, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, I really do want to talk about this, is the fact that humpback whales are gay. It's funny because they're already called the humpback whales. So how the fuck were the humpback whales actually gay this whole time? Were they gay before they were humpbacks, or are they gay because they're humpbacks? And also, that's just Alex Jones was right. The water's turning the freaking whales gay. And so,
See,
yeah, I wanted to talk about it.
I've been working on my patent for underwater spray paint, but only in rainbow colors, specifically for this moment. Like, I see every humpback whale as a train car is seen by a hooligan. Like, that's just a blank canvas for me to slap a giant rainbow on there.
Hell
I cannot wait to make all the humpback whales gay.
Hey, Nick, is it the cleanest gay sex because it's taking place in the water? So it washes away the filth every time they consummate.
Have you ever tried having sex in the water, Ben?
Not gay sex, no.
I didn't ask if it was gay sex.
Yeah, I have. And the
It's
lubrication
overrated,
is
right?
somewhat affected. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, the buoyancy can be
Yeah,
a problem.
Sex in the water?
Yeah, I think whales have it rough already. So if you've got now like humpback whales, where's a humpback whale's anus even look like? Wait.
I saw a picture. I did see a picture, and it
this
is.
Saw a
missionary?
picture of this?
Do they get down missionary?
Well,
or
I don't know.
how do
Can I,
they go?
can I present
Is one of
this?
them
I
wearing
gotta-
leather? Like, does
I-
one of them
I
have like
think
one of
you're-
those leather driving caps and like a strap harness? Is it called like Papa Smurf or whatever?
Can you show this? So this.
Oh
is
my
the
God.
whale- the humpback
On
whales.
the floor after the party. Girls carrying the shoes down in the lobby.
So this is actually from I think this is the Sydney show, right? Is the Accor Stadium Sydney? Yeah, Taylor Swift is here in Australia, and I was looking up videos of whales, and the Swifties came up because damn, look at that. She's famous apparently out here. She's like a famous influencer, and
This-
that's
that-
fucking crazy.
That thing on the screen right now is an influencer? I mean, what does she
Yeah.
influence other than the tides, Elijah? I mean, the prices of grain in other countries too, I guess, but
She's also keeping the seismic activity centers in business consistently. Oh, I felt more activity, you know. She's keeping them employed.
Normally they only take off the shoes when they're wearing heels after a big night. Notice they're flat boots, and she still has to take them off. So the ankles
she
have been
can't
struggling
wear
and
heels.
suffering.
If she wore heels, the earth would pop. No, like I said, I don't like the shape of the Kardashians. I do like it better than that. Like, how does that chick, like, she is bulbous, but she still has no like ratio. She has no hip to waist ratio. And it's not because her weight, like her hips suck in somehow still.
It's we call that the pigeon body. So it's actually the abo body. It's like
I had an
we've
abo
always
body
called it-
experience.
Oh, I've got to hear about that. Break it down for us, Nick.
What's an abo body experience?
No, I just it's watching this video right now.
All right, here we go.
Please tell me more.
We need to go to the story though, because I'm going to talk about this. Okay, so speaking of real shit here, here's the real story. NBC News: humpback whales were photographed having sex and gay sex for the first time. So apparently, they were photographed. So someone's known about this, and the question is, but why did someone know about this and was watching it, and then they didn't say we just found out about this for the first time? It's the first time on photograph.
You've done this. You've like been to your favorite thing. Like you're at Yellowstone, right? You're like, oh, finally I'm at Old Faithful. And like, it's like been 43 and a half minutes. You're like, fucking finally, this thing's going to pop. You're just sitting there and you're like, oh, God damn it. I left my camera in the room and you can't go back. You got 30 seconds till the thing's going to go off because it always does. And you're like, oh, shit. So he knew he's trying to photograph these whales. This guy's been watching them have sex for years. And he always forgot his phone. He could never film it. And he's finally underwater. He's like, yes. Here comes
the
the
sperm
boom.
whales, right? That's why they call them the sperm whales too. Can we ask a question? Is it really surprising the whales are gay? They're called humpbacks. They're called blue whales with blue balls, right? That's what we're talking about here, the sperm whales. But it literally says this, man. It's like, let me see if I can get this. I think I can zoom in here so your people can see better.
Shift.
I have vibrating underwear on and it goes off every time you mumble, so that felt good. The reports of three authors are marine biologists apparently, and it says we realized pretty quickly there was
Stack?
Yeah, what does it say?
Stephanie. Oh, Stack. I thought it was Stephanie Sack. I was like, come on, like that's got to be fake. This got to be from The Onion, but no, it's Stephanie Stack. That's perfectly reasonable. Like a stack of blue whales just humping each other to death.
Well, yeah, that's what I watch when we're off air. But when we're on air, I always keep it to just whale on whale action, one at a time. You know what I mean? I don't want to have too many whales involved so people know what I'm really into.
Well,
but apparently
it's the gay agenda, right? Like, because they have to show them with monogamous relationships so we don't think of them as disgusting. Like, because if you actually saw like 5 guys all just piled onto each other, just like humping in unison, you'd be like, that's gross. That's not Christian. But if you see 2 and you're like, oh, they've been married for 25 years, you're like, God probably is okay with that. It's the same with the whales. They don't want a stack of humpback whales because everybody would reject that. They'd be like, no, that's against Christ, and we need to cleanse this immediately with fire. I don't know how we get fire underwater, but we're going to find out right now. But no, they're doing this gay propaganda stuff where they can only have 2 monogamous humpback whales gay fucking each other. Is the whale's butthole on the top of the whale or the bottom of the whale?
In the blowhole.
Yeah. Oh,
I
dude,
thought that was... You know that's an
least-
epic blowjob. Like, that's gotta be great.
I just gotta I
Guy
like
might
to
be
think
gay
of my
for that.
whales. I like to think I love when someone makes the case of like I like really prefer to watch my whales having heterosexual sex. You know, when I'm watching whales fuck each other, I like it to be straight. You know what I mean? Like there's no really way to explain this. You know what I mean? Like there's no argument here. It's like I prefer watching straight sex of whales. But all I was gonna say here is that they're apparently gay. One male whale who appeared unhealthy or injured and was strong and a healthy male. So I guess the male that received penetration was visibly emaciated and covered in whale lice that can proliferate on the humpback whales that have lost mobility.
So it was non-consensual.
Yeah, he was raped. The author suggests that the emaciated whale may have approached the photographer's friend boat to seek
Stephen
cover.
Hawking wanted play too. Like,
so he got raped. So this is whale on whale rape. And then it said the emaciated.
Look at it.
Look, there's the penis, and he's fucking him.
Oh my gosh, he's got his hands around his hips.
He does. He's mounting the rod. So who is the bottom in that scenario?
It never occurred to me that a whale banging another whale would actually wrap its fins around like the midsection of the whale and be like, here comes baby girl. Like, I never even thought about whales having sex until now.
Hey, and Nick, in future, people that ordinarily promote the abnormal lifestyle, they would say, but there's lots of this that takes place in the animal kingdom, so it's not unnatural, it's not abnormal. Didn't you hear the story about the whales?
Beautiful.
Yes, now whales are having sex, and whales can obviously give us a demonstration of what they're getting up to. So it is natural. This is the way nature intended for things to happen.
This is
They
good
will
if they're
use that
into
at
a
some
little like
stage.
rough stuff too, because those fins have got to be good for laying a fat one right on the booty, just right,
Dude,
How
isn't
does
that
he avoid
weird?
the barnacle? How does he avoid the
No, but he had
barnacle?
lice. So this guy has whale TDs, and I think what was weird about that, this story tripped me out for a lot of reasons, because not only did it make me uncomfortable seeing how whales have sex as a very human-like situation, but I also couldn't figure out how to blame the Jews for this one. No, I'm just kidding. No, I literally was
I'm just
thinking
kidding.
of,
I definitely can. I definitely can
No,
blame
no,
the
no.
Jews for this.
No, but I really was like trying to think of this. Like there was no way for me to like even explain this, because whales' sex lives are so not something I've ever thought about, that I didn't even understand what this was. And all I would say is it's funny because the gay community is going to use this to try to say that being gay is natural. And it's like, dude, if you want to use the activity of rapist whales for why you are the way you are on Earth, go right ahead. But this is funny because a big whale raped a little STD whale, and he was trying to
It's
hide.
called a twink, Elijah.
A twank. He's from the tank. He's from the tank. Okay, it's called a tank. He's in the tank. He gets fucked from behind, and then it looks like a human rape. So like that's why I was like watching, and I was like, I was getting off to it too, which is this weirdest part. I liked it. No, but I didn't understand it. I'm like, so whales are gay, but they rape each other like they're in prison? That's weird. All right, moving on with my life.
I
don't know how I feel.
I have a crude I'm not a marine biologist, so I do have. We'll go back to your thing in just a second. We have to have a visual aid here. So we've got the humpback whale. This is obviously just a drawing. This isn't a photo, in case people are curious. They don't look like this when they're out of the water. This is someone drew this. But the rostrum's up here. It's got blowholes here in case you have blowholes. I think there's only one, but I don't know. But that's in case you have two gay humpback whales to deal with. You have dorsal fin, dorsal ridge, the median notch. That's how they judge sexiness. These are flukes. They shouldn't happen. The anus is down here. So that like the wrapping is like lifting up the hips so that the whale penis can go under the whale and in. This is so I just want to point out that I didn't know if the anus was on like the back of the whale or like on the underside of the whale, because
You didn't see that picture? Like, I think the gay rapist whale knew what he was doing. Look, go back to my
know
screen.
that he does, but
Where's that?
I'm not a whale biologist, is what I'm saying.
Look, he knew where it was. So I trust him, because I feel like if I want to know where the anus is on a whale, I'm going to go ask the gay rapist whale. You know what I mean? He knows what's up. It's like fucking like, it's like, I don't know. Things ain't good out in the sea, under the sea. And you're like, oh, I get the song now. Under the sea.
Well, did the rapist keep
raping me.
it submerged to the point of death as well and just discard it? Or did it allow it to come up and breathe?
Where do
Look,
they
I
dump
wanna-
the body when they kill him after the rape? Not in the water. They dump them on that's the beached whales that were just raped? Is that what they are? They dump their bodies on the land?
Wait, so they're beaching themselves to escape the potentiality of
Yeah.
rape. They were chased by
No, those
the
are all just
rapists onto
We
the
think
beach.
we're saving them? Push them back. Get them in the ocean. They're like, like, oh, listen to their noises. They're talking and they're like screaming. They're being raped.
okay. So
It's true.
I do want to point out there's a lot of good news actually in here for gay whales. And that is that they have throat grooves. They have throat grooves. I just want to point that out. Like this is a feature we've been trying to get into women for years, and whales have this already. So if there's any DNA we need to borrow, it's Women's History Month. I should point that out. It's Women's History Month now. And we're sitting here talking about men whales, obviously, which I think is a little disrespectful to women. But
Male whales. They sound the same. Males,
What
whales.
what do lesbian whales do?
I have a. You want me to bring that up? I have something to bring up.
Oh, do you? You have a resource for this? I can't figure out how they scissor each other, so I'm really curious how that works.
Yeah, I do right
Oh.
here. Let me see. Here we go.
Taste the biscuit.
Taste the
the
biscuit.
goodness of the biscuit.
Oh my god.
Taste that honey sauce. Taste the goodness of the biscuit with that honey sauce. Taste the
I
biscuit.
hate you.
Taste the
I
goodness.
hate you and that so much. I feel like if you pulled that shirt up, she would pop like a can of biscuits too.
If her throat was ridged, would you?
No.
It actually looks like she's got one of those donut flotation devices that you'd use in a swimming pool, but she's just pulled the t-shirt over the top of it because it's extremely rotund.
She
But yeah,
seriously
there's
looks
a
like
whole
a guy
lot
named
going on there.
Charles to me. Like, I can't even believe that's a female. The delineation of features between the genders is diluted so far in 2024 that I don't know what to believe anymore.
And
Well-
you'd still be just as clueless even if she had long hair as well, I'm guessing, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Dude,
I know.
somebody said in the chat, like, what kind of asinine juvenile bullshit is this? And then someone said, it's because Elijah's on the show. The retard Elijah's on the show. And that's true, actually. So thank you for that. In the chat, the truth is, it's not up to my responsibility to decide what the fuck we're talking about on the show. It's up to the sick guy. But luckily for him, he said, hey, man, do you want to come give me a blowjob? You know, and I said, yeah, let's do this. So we got on the screen and I said, let's do what I love to do, which is talk about gay whales and lesbian moms. This is from an account called Two Moms. Now, this is what's going on. You guys
Two
want to talk
moms
about
in one, I guess.
non-asinine? You guys want to talk about non-asinine stuff? How about we talk about something a little more important than you little fuckers? How about we talk about
Okay.
this? And let's talk about our friend here. Let's talk about something serious. How about my friend and also colleague, Steve Baker of The Blaze, who just got arrested today from the FBI,
What
who's
did
a
he do?
journalist, a federally credentialed journalist, and got arrested and charged today. You probably could bring it up on your end over there. But he is a journalist. He is credentialed. If you want to talk about some serious stuff, and I don't know how I'm doing this while this is on the screen playing. It's quite the anticlimactic juxtaposition there. But yeah, so Steve Baker obviously is an independent journalist. I want to give a couple caveats. Is that he, when he was filming the events on January 6th, he was not working for The Blaze. The Blaze is not the same thing as Blaze TV. Blaze TV is a company I used to work for. Blaze TV is a daughter company of Blaze Media, which
Not
I
a
believe is
son
the parent
company?
company. No. It's Women's History Month. Everything's daughters.
Non-binary.
It's non-binary. The Blaze is a news organization I used to work for as well. So he now works for The Blaze. He has a federal credential now, but he didn't have one then. But he was a journalist. He had been working for like over a decade in like high intensity situations as a well-published, well-researched journalist. And he, again, now currently works for another publication. He has a credential. He was cleared by the FBI for his publication, for his credential, and for his security clearance. I want to remind you, he has FBI security clearance now in DC. And they decided they were going to charge him only after he did a deep research. So the Blaze got control from Mike Johnson, I think, gave them control of over
Mike
10,000
Johnson.
hours of footage from January 6th. So he got that. So what he did is his job was a task force to go over all of the information and to find out whether or not there was a coordination from law enforcement, find out. So he ended up releasing this expose, and he's continuing to release an expose about coordination between Capitol Police, DC Metro Police, and the rioters to allowing this event to occur. And only once he started releasing his findings, which implicated the director of the Capitol Police, did they then decide to charge him. And then they wouldn't tell him what they were going to charge him with, made him surrender, and then they ordered him humiliation ritual. They told him he had to show up in sandals and shorts. I'm not joking. They said he had to show up in sandals and shorts.
You got to show up dressed like Ricada Law in the summer.
Yeah, but they were trying to make him look like he wasn't a real journalist. They were telling him how he had to dress. So he showed up in a suit with his credential, like a man should, and then they did fed ops where they had 2 black men arrest him, because black men are, they have to do that thing, like 2 upstanding black men in suits to arrest him. So they had this whole idea of how they wanted it to look. This guy in shorts and shirts and sandals coming, this unprofessional guy being arrested. They were trying to fed op him into looking bad. And I have to talk to him later. I just texted him earlier, and I'm waiting a day to cool off, for him to cool off. I don't know what the deal is yet or what his charges are, but they decided to charge him. And this is really insane because I think this is the first case ever in the history of journalism where somebody who's currently holding a security clearance, second highest, I think, security clearance in journalism, allows you to go into the congressional hearing rooms during high security, or security reasons to cover the events. They arrested him not because he committed any crimes, but because he exposed what was going on. And so it is really serious. It is detrimental to our rights. And because you guys didn't want to talk about fucking whales, literally, there you go. There's a story we can talk about, and that's an actual lawsuit. I don't know. Is there any legal issues here? That's where I'll ask Ricada. This idea of targeting journalists, is this legal implications of what does this set as a precedent arresting a guy like this,
Well, we've always got a conflict between journalists and the state, right? That's always in conflict. That's why the First Amendment is very clear. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press. Now, when that was written, 1791, it only applied to the federal government, although this is federal, so that, doesn't change anything. But since the 14th Amendment in 1867, I guess, is when that was adopted, we started applying all of the rights through the Constitution to the state, or through the amendments to the states. It no longer applies to the federal government. So when it says Congress shall make no law, now it means no state actor shall act in a way contrary to, which is a lot more complicated, but also more simple, because it means if you're a state actor of any kind, any action that you take in that is contrary to these constitutional principles must be weighed. It says shall make no law or shall take no action is how you would read that, or shall not be infringed. But they didn't mean that, of course. What they meant was shall not be infringed unless. And we have these different tests, but journalists have always, the journalistic protection has always been held in the highest regard. It is measured through strict scrutiny by the Supreme Court, which means that any state action interfering with a journalist must be what is a compelling government interest, and then any action taken must be narrowly tailored to only prevent the specific activity and not sweep up otherwise lawful activity by accident or by whatever. So it has to be so focused on exactly what's wrong that it's usually near impossible for the government to hold to the standard of strict scrutiny. Now, the court gets a little lax in how it applies strict scrutiny, as it always does. We always drift towards governmental power. There's no way around it. The government always wants to empower itself. Even the court, who's supposed to be on guard against the government empowering itself, the court will empower itself against journalists too. And we're not going to get into this just yet, but I have a serious story where a judge is holding veteran journalist Catherine Herridge, who's probably a pile of garbage, don't get me wrong, in civil contempt for refusing to divulge source. So here we go again, where we have a federal judge ordering a journalist to divulge their sources, something that is one of the most sacred held privacy interests of journalists is how they source their news. The only time you're ever supposed to breach the sourcing of news is if the journalists engaged in illegal activity specifically for the purpose of obtaining information that they received. Now, they can receive information that would be illegal to distribute so long as they didn't intentionally illegally acquire it, if they didn't participate in the illegality, right? So you, Elijah Schaffer, sitting there and someone mails you classified documents anonymously, it's got blood, coffee, and semen stains on it, and you're like, oh, well, I like this. And you start reading through the documents and you start publishing them. You can think of Glenn Greenwald, right? Glenn Greenwald gets this huge information dump from Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden illegally obtained a whole bunch of documents from the NSA and other departments, and he dumps them on Glenn Greenwald and that other chick that no one remembers. And they start distributing the information. Well, they didn't facilitate the illegal obtaining of the documents, so they were able to receive these documents and publish them with First Amendment protections, because they didn't commit a crime. They just received documents they weren't supposed to have. But their journalistic shield allows them to do that. Same thing with all of this stuff. If this guy is just going through material that's out there and reviewing the federal government's actions, and he didn't actually intentionally engage in some unlawful act, he should have full protection to do that, even if it's very offensive to the government. Like that's the whole point. Like the government can't make review of itself illegal, because otherwise what's the point of having any journalistic protections at all? So yeah,
they don't want that though. And that's where I'm bringing that up, is because like there was just a landmark case today. Like people don't know. Someone in the chat said, Elijah tries so hard to be funny and he never quite is. That's unfortunate that you think I'm trying. That is really unfortunate.
That's really that's an indictment on your comedy skills.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, because I don't think I've ever even successfully been funny one time on camera.
Not once.
But I will say I have successfully failed on camera at many things. One of those things is the fact that I'm still a credentialed journalist today. And someone had mentioned, I don't believe in credentials. Yeah, and I don't either. I understand that it's First Amendment protections. What a credential is there for is you also don't need a driver's license to fucking drive. But it does show that you do know how to drive, or unless you're Asian. But I genuinely believe when it comes to journalism, I work right now as a journalist for the Gateway Pundit. We release a lot of top quality stories. Releasing right now, we're involved in a Supreme Court battle, which is absolutely insane. And there's a lot of things I do behind the scenes in that regard, in gathering information. And I've never stopped working under protection of an agency. I've never stopped working under protection of an outlet, yet I'm still under investigation for wiretapping to this day. I still have problems with the FBI. I'm still under very clear. They're very clear.
You are monitored by the government?
Well, it's okay. Your dick pics are safe in my phone. Those are encrypted. But
what about my nipple pictures?
Well, those are already. I've used those. You know what I mean? I'm weird.
Okay.
Like only
No,
one
it's
time,
okay.
one time per nipple. And
No,
then
real quick though, before you go on, I want to point out to someone. Credentials are not required for journalism in the United States.
No.
Journalistic shields and journalistic protection laws in constitutions, either state level constitutions or federal constitutions, protect citizen journalists without credential. Everyone who's disseminating news to any audience larger than themselves is now basically a citizen journalist. So don't confuse yourself with thinking that you need some license to be a journalist. That's not what Elijah's saying. That's not what anybody's saying. What a journalistic credential now is just basically a verification badge for the convenience of event planners and event organizers who have a limited amount of space or limited amount of seats for the press. And so you show up, and like if Elijah and I show up to the same event and they have maybe 30 press seats, and Elijah goes, I'm credentialed, I'm with Gateway Pundit, and I'm like, I'm Ricky Law, I'm a guy on YouTube, and I make dick jokes, and I also cover legal news. They're gonna be like, well, like, look, we have 30 seats. I know this guy is with Gateway Pundit. We know the organization. He's got a badge. We're going to have him in. We don't have the seats for you. Maybe next time. Or maybe you can contact us ahead of time next time and let us know who you are and that you're coming, so we can make sure that we can verify you. But that's the type of purpose of a press credential now. And there are certain press credentials that the government will utilize, again, because of space. The press staff that go on Air Force One or get to ask questions of the president, they have security measures that are in place necessary to protect the president. They're not going to let some asshole like me just show up at a presidential press conference, but they'll have a group of people who are credentialed. They're reviewed by the Secret Service. They're background checked. They know everything about these people. They know where to find them if anything goes weird. They know if they don't show up that's strange too. So like those are the purposes of press credentials. You don't have to have them to be a journalist. They make certain journalistic endeavors easier for both the journalists and the organizers of events. That's the whole purpose of them now.
Well, and police the day of events. And I think that's what people don't understand what credentials credentials are more so police can know you're not lying, right? It's the same idea. Like, just because you have a driver's license doesn't mean you actually know how to drive. You might actually wreck your car, but police just want to know you know how to operate a vehicle. And whether I care about that or not doesn't matter. When you're in a place and there's a curfew per se, and they're allowing, exemptions for journalists to cover an event at a riot or something going on, it helps to have an ID card to show that you're a part of something so that you're not lying to them and they can verify your story. If you don't want to get held up for half an hour in custody or detainment, tell you're waiting to get out. All I was going to say with this stuff, with the credentials, is like, this current administration does not care about the credentials. They do not care about the law anymore. And I know that because I'm not going to explain it all here, but I think we had talked about how through Freedom of Information Act, I was able to prove that the feds, particularly the DOJ, got direct access to my iCloud, right? And I've discussed that before. They directly got access under a FISA from Apple to get into my iCloud to monitor and intercept my text messages and my calls. Because if they can get into your iCloud, they can also get into your Signal. And this is what they did to Tucker Carlson, which is absolutely amazing. They ended up going in a back door into his phone. And so the way they do that, then they put a gag order through another warrant on Apple to prevent Apple from alerting me that my privacy had been violated. So we have consumer protection, privacy protection, Information Act protection. But the way the DOJ can through Domestic Terrorism Watch is they basically can put a gag order on the companies. And so I didn't find out about this until the gag order expired on Apple, and then Apple had to go to court and then explain why they breached privacy or my data privacy, and then had to agree to alert that they had given over access to my iCloud. So to me, the fact is like back in 2012, I think it was, we talked about, where they weren't even doing this for terrorists who literally shot up a building. Maybe that was before that, but in San Bernardino, they wouldn't give access to this stuff because even in real terrorism, it was considered a violation of personal rights, even under the Patriot Act, to get this kind of access. Now, just because I act like a dumb retard, I'm just saying.
San Bernardino, 2014, I think.
Okay, so I don't know when it was. I'm just saying I know that there was the same ruling and they decided not to get involved. But in my case, because I'm connected to January 6th, they violated not only their own ethics, but their own previous standard of practice. And they come in and then they get access to my device, and I don't know what they took. I have a micro penis now, for sure. But it's like, it is interesting to me, though, that it's like, and people go, oh, that's just normal. And you have someone like Tucker Carlson, who's a very high profile person, saying that the federal government, the DOJ, was getting access to my Signal, which is a hyper encrypted messaging app, which means the only way to get in, other than maybe an interception through another device or an actual planted hardware, would it be probably to get in through the iCloud, get in through the back door and do actual bug phone monitoring. And it's like, our government is now breaking into your encrypted data and monitoring your data in your phone. I mean, this is fucking crazy. I am a journalist, that's all I'm saying. They don't care. And it's so gay that even people in the right-wing movement don't care this happened to me because I don't support Israel and the war in Palestine. They're so fucked over. Like, who cares if your rights are being violated by a journalist? You don't agree with Zionism, so we don't give a shit what happens to you. All I'm saying is this is pretty fucked, and it's not a good time to be somebody who's controversial because nobody's going to come to save you. That's all I'm saying. It's like, nobody's, there's no laws.
You know what's really fun about everything you just said? So many people on the right still hate Edward Snowden.
I know.
And it's like, you guys don't even realize that the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court that does the FISA warrants that you're talking about, none of that was public or known by any, outside of a handful of Americans. Nobody knew about it. It was completely secret until Snowden blew the gates off of it. He uncovered that. He talked about this court that exists. And if you don't know how the FISA court works, it's like a 9 or 12 justice panel that operates with the same level of authority of the Supreme Court. None of their orders are public. And in fact, if you were going before the FISA court, if you were going before them, you didn't get to know, and your attorney didn't get to know. In fact, the government would go and argue their side and your side and not tell you. And the decision making of the FISA court was literally Supreme Court level. And the judges, the panel of judges, were actually just sitting federal judges. They're sitting federal judges who would get rotatingly appointed to the FISA court by, I think, the Senate Judiciary Committee, or maybe it was the Senate Intelligence Committee. I can't remember which one would appoint them, but they would appoint this rotating panel of federal judges who weren't allowed to disclose that they were on the court to anybody else at all. So there were these, they would sit and do their normal federal judgeships, and then they would do the FISA judgeships separate from that. No one was allowed to know. Your attorneys weren't allowed to know. The orders against you weren't allowed to be disclosed. And the orders that came down had binding precedental value, just like a Supreme Court decision, but you weren't allowed to read them. Only the government was allowed to know that they existed. And so the government could actually use a classified court order as precedent against you, you typically being Verizon, AT&T, someone like that. And by the way, when those orders were used against like Verizon or AT&T, they weren't allowed to disclose what was going on to the public or to their customers. The only reason we even know anything about them is because of Edward Snowden. And then when he exposed the FISA court, he showed that they used, which you had to do because it literally only applies to foreign surveillance, right? So they say. But the way they were counting things as foreign surveillance was if you were 3 steps of connection away from a foreign actor who might be associated with terrorism, in this case, Al-Qaeda, although the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court's been around since, I guess, the 70s. But in most recent, it was Al-Qaeda that they were going after, and then ISIS. But you were 3 steps away on social media. So you knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who might be associated with ISIS or Al-Qaeda. That was 97% of Americans. So the FISA court could issue a warrant request, and they were rubber stamped at, I think, a rate of 99.6%. I think there were 2 refusals prior to Edward Snowden, 2 warrant refusals prior. 99.6% rubber stamp on the warrant requests on 97% of Americans. And then when Snowden exposed them, they agreed to add 1 more step of separation, which lowered it to only like 68% of Americans. So yeah, out of all of you guys in chat, and probably all of you were on the list, but let's just say you're a representative.
Yeah, I was like, it's
sample.
100% of your chat.
Let's just say the chat's a representative cross-section of America. That would mean that 70% of you would be literally considered knowing a terrorist, even though none of you do. And so FISA could monitor all of your in the United States communications with the assumption that one might somehow get to a terrorist. If a government agent went before the court, requested a warrant, and then argued against himself as to why he shouldn't get it, that argument was real strong, by the way. They still have a 97%, I think, rubber stamp rate on the FISA warrants. And Snowden exposed that. The other thing he did was expose the court. And once the decisions of the court were actually leaked by Snowden through Glenn Greenwald, the court determined that it was now in the public interest to share their decisions. So they started disclosing their decisions, like their published opinions. They started doing that it was now in the public interest. It's like, motherfucker, it's only in the public interest because one guy sacrificed his entire United States life and had to defect to a different country and still is under threat of, he's still under asylum in Russia because of this. That's the only reason we know anything about the FISA court at all. Everything about it is shrouded in secrecy until this one guy does it. And the right's like, that Snowden guy, he exposed troop movements. Like, dude, he had troop locations from fucking like 7 months prior to when they got released. Those troops weren't there. He didn't endanger troops. That was propaganda. And you retards bought into it because you're a bunch of fucking pro-government idiots. The right's embarrassing sometimes when it comes to government and police. It sucks.
The CCP would be very proud of that, or no, they'd in fact be envious of what the FISA court does, or the FISA court was almost created to enact similar things that are taking place within the CCP. You know, it's North Korea tactics as well. There is no presumption of innocence. There is no reasonable doubt. And to think of the 3 degrees of separation, Nick, that's like I'm going and doing something. I'm having conversations with somebody and I'm intent on joining Al Qaeda or whatever it may be, whatever the accusation would be. And then they want to come and prosecute you, who knows nothing about what I'm doing or who I speak to outside of this conversation, and try to prosecute you and draw you in through a dragnet to that and say, answer for this, Nick. And you're like, I don't even know these people. I've never met them.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, so Elijah's there. He's being surveilled by the FISA court. All they had to do was find someone who's a friend of Elijah, who has some other friend who basically lives in Iran or Iraq. Like, that's it. And when you think of the social networks that someone like Elijah or I have, like, I have 155,000 Twitter followers. I don't know who they are. I don't know anything about them, but I'm associated with them in some small way. So then you take 155,000 and then go to every one of those people outside that. And some of the people I follow or who follow me have hundreds of thousands to millions of followers. There's no way we're not qualified under that 3-step or even 4-step process. It's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, except there's no sexiness at the end of it.
Correct. But I was going to say what I think is the broader implication here. Like, there was the Gateway Pundit just released a finding on a court order for a January 6th case where the defendant is about to finish his time in solitary. I think it's actually solitary in max prison, his 2-year sentence. And the judge just overturned his extension clause, which was based upon heightening the charges based upon their severity. So, like the domestic terrorism charges, and essentially this charge has been used in it's a different variation. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm trying not to use the legal terminology because I don't know it. But they basically have used a variation of this extension or broadening of charges in 100 cases so far. And remembering that in January 6th, we've already handed out over 1,000 years worth of sentences to people. That's how serious it is. And they just overturned it, proving that basically these exaggerations that I call them of the court they're not provable. They don't have evidence. And these people did not, premeditate their terrorism or whatever they're trying to say to try to thwart democracy. There's no evidence in any of these cases that anyone tried to stop democratic process. And this is crazy to realize the court already determined sentences for 100 people that use these expansions or these broad determinations of law. And another court's like, wait a second, all these are illegal. So a lot of cases might be reseen, which is really good news. But that's what's scary about a lot of these courts, like you said, where it's like almost like commentators like Ben Shapiro, who was all like pro-vaccine and then now is not. Glad that you changed your mind, buddy. Little too late, right? FISA court, little too late to change your mind. Once Snowden, people lost their lives. Who knows who's been killed over this stuff? With the January 6th stuff, how many people have killed themselves, etc. I mean, I just saw another story we leaked the other day. The FBI back in 2020.
Oh, this is so fucking infuriating.
They raided a man's home owned over a nonviolent misdemeanor charge. It was some bullshit like obstructing a federal proceeding type of thing, which means AK that Congress was on hold for 6 hours. And they raided his home. Now, his wife was pregnant. They put his 4-year-old kid and his wife outside barefoot in shorts when it was 12 degrees, might I add you, 12 degrees outside. And that's Fahrenheit. So that's negative Celsius. The kid began to get hypothermia. And it turned out the woman was pregnant. And due to being held outside in the cold and the stress from the raid, she miscarried their baby. Now, I believe about birth at conception, that's a baby. So the FBI killed a baby and almost gave a child hypothermia and literally destroyed a family, gave him 2 months in prison, 2 years supervised release over literally a standing in the wrong place at the wrong time charge. And also, might remind you the cost of the raid, the resources involved in it. And it's like, that's the kind of shit that's like, you pro-government fuckers. Like, I remember the CEO of Blaze Media back when I used to work with them had told me at the time, like, we just got to wait out public opinion because Like, yeah, it'll be illegal if they raid you now. Like, but the public's on their side. They've convinced the public that this was a terrorist, domestic, usurping of power, and we've got to give it time, because if they don't arrest you now, eventually the truth will come out. You were there. You're telling me that it wasn't a domestic terrorist attack. You're telling me it wasn't well thought out and planned. You're telling me police helped coordinate their entrances. And I'm telling this is a week after it happened, 2021. I'm going, yeah, he's going, okay, well, that's not what the media is saying. And what they're waiting for is they're going to try to keep that information from getting to the public so they can buy their own time to violate their own statutes, manipulate, use the media to manipulate the public opinion. And then they have 2 years, 18 months to basically fuck as many people as they can. They're blue whaling it, right? They're fucking humpback whaling the public. So some gay whale shit. But I'm just saying, that's really how the justice system works. They fucking lie, they use the media to manipulate, and then they run on skewed public opinion to do as much bullshit as they can. And then even when the truth comes out, they never apologize. And whoever got fucked and killed just gets fucked and killed. You can't unrape yourself, So that's what's scary about this stuff, man. And I think a lot of, I don't know. Yeah, well, you couldn't either. You said no after the fact. You told me you were okay with it when it was happening. So I stand by that.
Regret rape is going to come back to bite you one day, Elijah. No, you're 100% right. And the problem with this, guys, when you read a news article about the January 6th arrest, generally speaking, or sometimes they'll mention it in a specific January 6th article, where someone's getting sentenced, some high profile thing. They'll talk about it being the largest law enforcement operation in the history of the country. I want people out there to consider the largest coordinated law enforcement operation in the history of America is literally a bunch of retards walking into the Capitol on January 6th. That is the largest law enforcement operation ever. Not the murder, not the assassination of a president, not
JFK,
not giant pedophile rings, not satanic murder cults, not people who are trafficking children, not people who are producing child pornography and distributing it, not people who are trafficking adult women and forcing them into pornography and distributing that. Nothing else. Just the fact that a bunch of dorks walked into the Capitol building when the doors were open for them, and they were walking around with their cameras. They look like a bunch of Japanese, I'll take a picture. That's what they're doing, walking around, and they're like, look at this violence. And you're like, holy shit. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some violent incidents on January 6th. We've seen the footage of officers being pinned by crowd surges. We've seen people fighting with officers. And those people maybe need to be prosecuted depending on their actions. If their actions amounted to some sort of assault of an officer or something like that, sure, you prosecute them that way.
Not if it's entrapment, though. But if they could have been held back and they intentionally invited them in and provoked them, I would say that they would at least have charges reduced.
That's what I'm saying. If not, just because you get in a fight with a peace officer does not mean you automatically assaulted a peace officer. I want to be very clear on that. First of all, as a lawyer, let me recommend, don't get in a fight with a peace officer. Even if you're justified, you're going to fucking lose that case 9 times out of 10. But hypothetically, there is a plausibility that an officer assaults you, you defend yourself in some way that is non-lethal, and you have a justifiable use of force in self-defense. Sure, but you have to look at those cases individually. You can't look at them in the context of these are terrorists. Therefore, any fight that they engage in is automatically some sort of assault of a government agent. No, not that's not how this works. And that's what they've done for every single thing. But I'm just acknowledging that there are instances of violence that can be looked at and possibly prosecuted. Sure. But the overwhelming majority of people on January 6th were nonviolent. The overwhelming majority of people on January 6th didn't breach or break any barriers. They were let in. And they walked through a door, and they're being treated as if they fucking infiltrated the government like a National Treasure movie where they're following Nick Cage's butthole through all sorts of government traps, only to be met by John Voight going, "You're under arrest, you motherfucker." That's an insane proposition how we got there. And the way they're treating it is as if everyone involved is the worst criminal ever. And the fact that there are still unprosecuted people, there are still people who are being held under arrest, or people who are being held under a sort of, not an arrest, but a supervised release, where they can't leave their state. You know, if they do need to leave their state for any reason, even if it's completely justified, like they've got like a family member who died and they want to go to a funeral, they have to get permission from a parole officer, from the court, because they have to prove that they're not fleeing. They have to provide collateral to leave the state, etc. Like all of that exists still 4 years later, or 3 years, I guess it's 3 years later. And we're acting like this is normal. This is not normal. This is the government cracking down on any sort of dissidence, any sort of contrary thought, any sort of thing that goes against the current regime. And the current regime's power was so threatened that day. And that's the one thing that everyone should take solace in, is that this is a cornered animal and this is how it acts. And we can't be afraid of a cornered animal. The way that it's acting is not reflective of strength. It's reflective of weakness. And the people always have power over the government in these situations unless we give in. But America's fully ready to give in to this. And guess why? They were conditioned by COVID to give in to all of this shit. They gave in to every fucking thing for COVID. And then they gave in to January 6th. And they're just like, oh yeah, those are all lunatics. Oh, I knew that guy. He'd be the guy at the grocery store ranting about how the government was probably killing kids. Like, no, the government does that from time to time. You should pay attention.
So it was a perfect precursor, Nick. It was a perfect precursor. The lockdowns, the submission of the people, the subjugation of the people, the dividing of the people. Because if you weren't wearing a mask, you want to kill people. So that divided the population in that sense. And then the January 6th stuff happened. All these insurrectionists who didn't have AK-47s, but nevertheless, they're the enemy. They've been demonized. And it's actually anathema to what the United States justice system is meant to stand for, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about the lunacy of calling them insurrectionists. Like, let's say the January 6th rioter insurrectionists got exactly what they wanted. They got everything, completely no resistance. They marched into the Capitol. Some people think that they would have hung Nancy Pelosi or whatever. She would have lived through that anyway. Look at her. It's like she would have just distended her jaw, eaten the noose. I don't know. But like, imagine they got everything they wanted. They walked in, they overtook the Capitol, and they prevented the reading of the electoral votes. And then they're like, aha, they prevented the exchange of peaceful transfer of power. It's like, well, wait, motherfucker, there's 14 days left. There's 14 days until the transfer of power occurs. So what do they do for 14 days? They don't have food. They don't have supply lines. They don't have weapons. They don't have barricades. They don't have training. They don't have organization. What are the Proud Boys? Are the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers? Are they going to like organize all of like the like random soccer moms and small business owners who are out there like, I just want lower taxes? Like, are they going to organize them into a fighting force capable of fending off anyone? Because if they had walked in there with guns, all they had to do was call in the National Guard, and they would have come in through with an automatic weapon, swept the hallways, and those people would have been done.
Dude,
they didn't have
stopped.
to do
They
that.
could have stopped it in a second, dude. From being in the Capitol, I can tell you there was actually things that open up in gas hallways. I've explained this multiple times. They have ways of like, I don't know if it's a button they press, but it's pretty cool. They can like gas hallways and with tear gas and shit. So I was in there, and I think some of the people in the chat, which are always fucking retarded, most of them are cool, but some of them are completely fucking idiots. Is like, you know, they always like tweeting like, you know, if you mess around with feds, you're gonna find out, as they like tweet and like text on their computer. Yeah, some of us have real jobs out in the real world too. We don't just sit behind a computer and a microphone, and we actually go out on the field and work.
Hey, now, come
did
on.
stuff out there.
Stop rubbing
you know,
it in.
You know, like people always like, yeah, I could talk behind a mic too. Yeah, you fucker, you dumb fucking twat. It's like, okay, listen, there's a real thing that you have to do. Now, you do pay a price for fucking with the government, because that's true. However, I have to say with the January 6th stuff, like a lot of it is also realizing how much was propaganda was used for that moment. So one of the interesting things is this constant case of people wearing helmets and vests. And, you know, I mean, they even got me, right? I was wearing a flak jacket as well. So when you go in and you go, Yeah, but when you go in and you say, well, why? Well, because one of the main reasons that people don't discuss is that at every single Stop the Steal event, the DC Metro actually allowed large gatherings, even when there was permits pulled by the right wing, of literal Antifa and these members to block access to the federal building. So they used they use this at SCOTUS. They use this, multiple times, even at the Ellipse. They would allow these big groups of Antifa and they would attack the Patriots. Now, I would say at the time, they would use them to attack and they would arrest the Patriots for fighting back. Now, there's a current case that's going on right now that proved entrapment because there was a proof that there was a riot and there was a skirmish that went on between Proud Boys, right-wingers, white nationalists, they say, and Antifa, and the police and the feds prosecuted and arrested 20 right-wingers and no left-wingers. That's currently being discussed right now.
Wait a minute, was that the case where the Proud Boys is this in New York where the Proud Boys got in a fight with
yeah.
Like they threw the bottle and then there was like a melee that broke out between Proud Boys and Antifa, I think it was. And then they dispersed and they never went after the Antifa guys. They had them all of them on camera. They went after the Proud Boy guys and arrested a bunch of them. Is that the one? It was in New York, right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact semantics of it. Because there's so many cases going on. All I know is it was proved that there was it's considered entrapment, but it was also considered biased policing, biased prosecution. Proof now in the court that they were intentionally entrapping right-wingers to make them seem like they were a violent mob, right? And this is one of the interesting things. Someone in the comment was like, "Oh, you went out when it was safe." First of all, you're welcome. The footage you see of Rayup starting January 6th, the first violence, that's my footage. You can see my watermark on it. We captured the riot starting, right? But my point is that you see this entrapment, and what they don't tell you is people were wearing that stuff because the police was entrapping right-wingers. They were letting them get attacked, and you can watch hours of footage of right-wingers getting attacked in D.C. for several months in a row during that time, and it was very dangerous. It was it was extremely dangerous. Remember, I remember, if people remember, when I actually got extracted out of the city by the FBI because there was actually a hit. They were trying to kill me. They were trying to lead me in this march. I got pulled out by law enforcement and I wasn't allowed in the city for a while. And they're the ones who told me literally to make sure that you're wearing a bulletproof vest, make sure you're wearing some sort of stab protection. So I wore stab protection as well because they couldn't guarantee your protection during that time.
Duct tape on your butthole.
Well, yeah, but that was only when I hung out with you in the jacuzzi. But other than that, it's like if the DC Metro Police are telling you that they can't secure your safety in the most policed, I think per square meter, the most policed or surveilled area in the United States, or at least habitable place, it's very interesting of this movement to like, oh, well, they showed up in helmets and vests. Yeah, but for months, you let them get attacked. And every time they gathered, oh, there was Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. Yeah, well, the right wing had to get their own police force. Like, they had to have organized groups of people to protect them, right? Like, that's what no one talks about. Why were there Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and 3%ers at the front of the line? And why were they there? And why were they, this and that? Because for nearly a year, at least for those previous several months from the beginning of, around the election to then, they were literally forced to form their own protection. They were forced to wear protection and not condoms. This is not whale fucking. This is, your head split open shit.
I've never worn a condom when fucking a whale, honestly.
Well, yeah, but people were stabbed too. There was a lot of stabbing. So it's just a very complicated situation. From being on the ground there for many months and seeing it, it was very violent, very scary. And I remember for myself constantly being in very precarious situations. So they fucking gaslit them for months so that it would look like they were armed, look like they were in military fatigues. Believe me, when the right-wingers first started gathering, they weren't wearing helmets and fucking bulletproof, armor. They started wearing that shit when the police let them get attacked. So I just think it wasn't just allowed on January 6th. I think this was a long-standing, coordinated gaslighting and intention, and part of the demonization of Proud Boys and everything was so that they could, have these people who directed the attack and blame it on white people and men. And I really think there's a much deeper story here that we're not even getting to the bottom of yet. But I really do think it's creating a domestic enemy in the country was the ultimate goal, and making it that it's
course.
populism. Yeah, the rise in populism is really the true enemy, right? And
So
I don't know. That's what I think.
Yes,
Well,
the
Rand
rise of
Paul
populism. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so Rand Paul wasn't even afforded protection. Remember when Rand Paul was trying to leave the Capitol?
Well, he
when
has
was with his
curly
wife,
hair.
and he was encircled. So if Rand Paul wasn't afforded protection by federal services, what hope does the individual have? And when you're talking about sort of people having to defend themselves and certain groups getting together because they could recognize that the police wasn't giving them any protection and they were allowing Antifa to throw bricks at their heads in multiple cities, well, Based Stickman, he was a natural response.
He
Do you
was
remember
so
the
funny.
Based Stickman character?
Yeah.
He came out
So-
and he punched back twice as hard because he had to. What was he going to do? Get his head stomped in as well?
One of the things I really loved watching over the past couple years, I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was like it started with the Battle of Berkeley, right? This was when I think it was Milo or Ben Shapiro or Ann Coulter, I can't remember, got like rejected from Berkeley, and there was this fight between Antifa and like right-wing guys, and Base Stickman I think was there, and I was watching Sargon, my friend Carl, talk about like comparing these like skirmishes that were occurring to like ancient conflicts and talking about how big the numbers were, and like these would have been remarkable battles in history. Now, aside from there wasn't really a death count because they weren't using lethal weapons, but like the fights that were going on where these battle lines were drawn and tactics were being played, and like listening to Carl talk about them was fucking hilarious. But you're watching them and you're going, holy shit, like this is actually important though. Like these are not minor tiffs between people with differing political views. These are literal serious divides in the country, to the point where people are willing to fight to stop someone from speaking, and the other side is willing to fight to keep them speaking. And the someone that they're talking about is a retard like Ben Shapiro. Like, who fucking cares if this little coked out Jew is talking to anybody? But it mattered that much that someone from our side got to speak in a place like Berkeley. And then it progressed from there, and you start watching these things. And the whole time Elijah was talking, I was thinking about the flak jackets and stuff like that. I'm thinking about this. I'm like, yeah, no, battle lines were literally drawn. Skirmishes were happening. Tactics were being employed. Carl was talking about, like, you grab these guys and pull them behind the line of right-wing people, not to do anything to them, but it would terrify them because they'd be taken away from their numbers, and that was their only security. And he's like, if you just grab these people and isolate them, they'll break down. They have nothing. They have nothing but violence, and their violence is only fueled by their security and numbers. And if the right will just organize, hold a line, and start pulling these people away from their security, they'll break down the whole thing and terrify them. And it was fascinating to watch. And then, Base Stickman comes out. And then you see that one video of the guy who's got like, he's got like the helmet and he clocks like 5 people in a row.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, that guy's hilarious.
That was kick ass. It was mutual
But there was
combat.
the bike lock guy too. So that's when you say, why were they wearing helmets? It was very early on
they're getting
that that
smashed in the
professor got, was splitting people's heads open. So like I wore a helmet too. Okay. That was also from when I was 4 years old, because the doctor said I came out wrong. But
right. You had to wear a helmet when you eat cereal. But like, no, the bike lock guy was crazy too, because this is a felony aggravated assault in every jurisdiction. We're talking, you take a bike lock and you swing it at someone and you hit them in the head, which
That's a deadly weapon.
Yeah, it's serious bodily injury. So you're talking at least a felony with a 3 to 10 year sentence in almost every jurisdiction. And you're gonna be like, well, and he got nothing. He got I think they dropped his prosecution. They gave him a misdemeanor, something like that, 6 months probation, something ridiculous. And you're like, if you took a bike lock and you went into a florist and you're like, give me 5 black roses, and they're like, no, and you clock them on the head and they start bleeding out of their head, or they get a concussion or something, you're going to prison. You're not going to prison for like a minute. You're going to prison for years. You can't do that shit. This guy did it multiple times on camera, and they're like, well, it's like, there's no well here. This is fucking, this is aggravated assault. This is felony level conduct. And
it wasn't spontaneous, Nick, right? It wasn't spontaneous.
No,
it wasn't
of course not.
self-defense.
It's
It was
premeditated.
Premeditated. Yeah, premeditated. He was on record multiple times on multiple videos in multiple locations prior to it saying, this is what I'm got. And he was also encouraging other people on his side to do the similar type of thing. How do you walk on something like that?
Eric Clanton was his name. Thank you, Ron Bacardi, for saying that. You walk on it because you have a motivated government. And that's what Elijah's been saying this whole time. And that's what I wanted to echo real quick. I want to monologue for just a minute, and then I want to read the super chats on YouTube, and then we're going to switch to Rumble exclusivity. So let me do this real quick, though. 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021, all kind of meshed together in these tests. These were government tests. COVID was a giant test on social compliance. What does it take? What does it take to scare the populace into full-on compliance to the point where they will pull the fucking 1984 report your neighbor, the Brave New World, like, you must report all violations from government to your local authority, and it was nothing. It was a bad flu, so to speak. Like, I got COVID. I got the original COVID variant, COVID Primus or whatever. It sucked balls. I was 40 years old-ish when I got it, and I think maybe I was 39. My wife and I got it. We were in bed for like a week. Felt like we had gotten our ass kicked by a pack of Mel Gibson's Nightmares. And like, whole body hurt. Like, it literally felt like I had bruises over my whole body. I had a low-grade fever. I didn't think I was going to die, but I was miserable for 7 to 10 days, and it sucked. But I got over it. That was the end of that. I never got it again. If you were older, way worse. Like, some old people just died like fucking crazy. It went through nursing homes and killed a bunch of Republican voters. That's what that did. If it hit a kid, the kids like went, oh, I'm good, mom. And they were fine. Like, it was that fucking weird. It's this weird thing, but that's all it took. That is what it took to keep people inside for a year and a half, to keep them from going to church. For people who believe that God
keep them in the brothels,
dude,
keep them in the brothels and the liquor
Elijah,
stores, and keep them out of church.
People who believe that God helps them find their car keys stayed home from church because of COVID. It's like, well, God will help you find your car keys, but he won't keep you safe from this when you go worship him on Sunday. Like, for a year and a half, people stayed inside, and you're like, wait, you can go outside. And then you're like, no, I might get someone else sick. You're like, well, maybe they shouldn't go outside then. Like, that's on them. Like, they don't have to go outside. But if you want to go get milk from the store, you can do that. For a year and a half, all the government had to do was say, this will kill everybody you've ever loved in your entire life. In fact, if you even call them on the phone, their penis will fall off and they'll die from COVID.
It happened to me.
And
it did.
Yeah. No, it did. You died twice. You called me and you're like, and I was like, you're dead. I don't want to talk to you. And these people just believed it. That was the first thing. It was, what does it take? How much fear? And the answer is not fucking much. And I remember the beginnings of COVID, because the right is so cool now. They're like, we never believe. The right was so ready. They were so fucking ready for government compliance. I debated guys on the right saying, no, we got to stop this right now. This is way worse. It came from China, and therefore it's like the worst thing ever. I debated this guy. It was right when Andy Bashir in Kentucky had locked away this guy in his own house and stationed police officers outside his house that made him stay inside. He's like, I didn't even get tested for COVID. And they're like, nope, you have COVID. Therefore, you got to stay in your house. Here's our police officers. If you come out, we're going to do something about it. And I'm asking this guy in the debate, I'm like, what do they do if this guy wants to like go to the store and buy some milk? And he's like, well, they can't let him. I'm like, how do they stop him? Like, if they go up to him, they'll get COVID or whatever, presumably. And he goes, well, they got to shoot him. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? You want a government agent to just shoot a guy because he's leaving his house? He's like, yeah, that's what we got to do. That was the right at the beginning of COVID. Now they quickly started to get disillusioned from that and realize that the government is lying to them like always. But at first, the right was willing to comply. That's how bad government authority has gotten, that the right is like, yes, the government is good. Wait, maybe they're not. So that was the first test. January 6th is the second, where we all accept that this is the worst terrorist attack on our country since ever. And we're like, but wait, though, like the only people that died were killed by the government. Like the rioters didn't kill anybody. Only the government killed. It's like, well, that one cop died. It's like he died later from like a heart attack, like a weirdo, because he was sad about Night Ranger not playing anymore. I don't know. And like, who knows why that guy died? Is completely unrelated to the events of the day. And we're just accepting this. And now we have over 1,000 arrests, probably over 1,500 arrests, something like 900 convictions, something like 450 to 600 forced plea agreements, because people are so goddamn scared of what happens if they don't plea. Because if they plead, they might get 6 months in a county jail. If they don't plea, they'll go to prison for 3, 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes in solitary confinement, after they've already been sitting in solitary confinement waiting 2 to 3 years for the prosecution, just hoping that they'll get discovery on the thousands of hours of footage that are available. The government just won't release, which is unconstitutional, by the way, but they just won't do it. And the judges are like, yeah, too bad. All of this has been just a goddamn test of how complicit and compliant we are when the government comes calling. And we need to be really fucking vigilant about the next thing the government goes after us on, because it won't be the test. It will be the action. And that's what's fucking terrifying to me. Let me read these chats. And then we'll switch to Rumble. And then I'm going to take a quick break to go check on my kids and my wife, since we've all had the fucking flu. And Elijah can cover, and Ben, I guess, can cover for a few minutes. and then I'll be back and we'll continue on Rumble. Kyan Rennell says, Elijah, Palestinians aren't people, though. What do you have to say to that?
I don't know. What do I say to Palestinians aren't people? I'd have to say this. I don't want Palestinians in my country. And but I also don't want the people that they hate in my country either. So I want all those people to get the fuck out of my politics and stop invading our nation.
Wait a minute. You don't want Palestinians in your country? What are you, Jordan? What are you, Egypt? What are you, Iran? Iraq? What are you?
Yeah, people are always like, oh, so you're pro-Hamas? It's like, I hate everyone in that conflict. How about that? I hate both sides equally.
Ben George says, my girlfriend always repays me in cash from her purse on all of our dates. She handed me $5,000 in cash from her purse on our Aspen trip. Said no man ever. And if you do say that, you should be beaten. Rael says, a friend's dad just found out they have spinal cancer. They need less than $1,500 to meet their goal. Holy fuck. So there's a GoFundMe. Jesus, Rael, I don't even know what to do with what you sent me. I'm sorry to hear that. Tell you what, can you send that to me, and I'll promote it next week on the show? Can you like just send me the actual GoFundMe link in an email or a message? Swedish Asylum Seeker says, Twitch stream Interstellar. It's on Prime. You'll cry? Maybe. Ben George, imagine the biblical ramifications had a gay whale swallowed Jonah. What immediate interpretation comes to mind? Yeah. What does this? Hey, boy, I'm going to bring you to Nineveh. Don't worry about it. I know you're trying to get there anyway because God wanted me to get you there. Robin Sage says, while I feel bad for Stephen Baker, I do think it's a severe misstep on the part of the feds. It will bring lots of new eyes to his reports on them. I disagree. I've never even heard of Stephen Baker or this. Ben George says, so they limit space to limit the First Amendment. See the problem. Actually, this is a weird thing. Look, space limitations are just reality. There's a limited amount of space that exists. There's a much smaller amount of space that we can utilize in any particular moment, and especially at a venue. It's not that they're particularly limiting space to limit the First Amendment. It's that there is a limit on space. And if you just have only journalists attending every event, you'll have a bunch of CNN faggots running around constantly and no one else able to go to anything. Believe me, as a free speech absolutist and as a strong proponent of citizen journalism, I would want everybody to be able to go to everything, but you just can't. Even if you have a venue that'll hold 100,000 people, there's still just 100,000 slots. And that's a lot, but it's never enough for the one journalist who doesn't get in. That's just a reality. You can solve this by having the credentials, by requesting journalistic passes, and lots of organizations are really good about this. Even shitty organizations are really good about giving journalists access to stuff, especially government. And government has to basically do it neutrally. And if they don't, you can sue them. Brett Cohen says, Pope, we all know it was Republican laws that now hold the January 6th people. It all comes to bite you in the arse. Stop playing sides. Play anti-totalitarian. Oh, do you think that I think like that the RICO laws and shit are good? No, I think all laws are garbage. I think all laws ended a bullet. Literally, remember Alton Sterling, the big fat black guy who first said, I can't breathe before George Floyd could even speak English? That was because he was selling loose cigarettes in New York. Yeah. That guy died because he was selling individual cigarettes for like 50 cents a piece. That was a law that you can't sell cigarettes individually because New York wanted its taxes, even though the pack of cigarettes already had taxes paid on it. I think that laws are fucking tyranny. And every law ends in a bullet. Every traffic stop, every stupid interaction with police ends in a bullet or a dead, well, usually a black guy, but sometimes white people too. Magnum North says January 6th was only a premonition. The government better take notice. So better the people, because the next response won't be as polite as January 6th, which is scary. Lord of the Kino says hyperpyrexia. Fever of 106 or higher is a medical emergency. If it is not lowered, organ damage plus death can result. 107 can cause brain damage. Oh, dude, I know. Thank Christ. Thank Christ it was found when it happened. Now, there is a possibility. I had a temporal thermometer and a contact temporal thermometer, and then I had an in-ear thermometer, and the 106 and 107 were the higher ones of those, and I'm hoping that they were just a little bit higher than like the actual internal temperature, but it was still fucking scary. Your Tamagotchi died. Says, also remember the trucker manifestation outside the Canadian Parliament, and the RCMP wouldn't interfere, so they all froze all truckers' bank accounts and funds. Yeah, well, Canada's garbage and should probably be burned at the stake, along with Justin Trudeau, with the rest of the Cubans. Jay Sean Lemoyne says, well, Nikki, so you had trouble breathing. How does it feel? Wheezing a mile in my shoes. Oh, God, that's funny. Where you been, brother? Thank you. Kyan Rennell says Elijah's country is Australia because he ran away. I've seen his legs. He can't run.
I can't run. Also, you should come here. It's a really great country because they have a police state and they rape you from their government, but they're honest about it. So the only difference between here and America is people go, America's free. You're like, aha, buddy. You just do like the Patriot Act and then raid people's homes and kill their pregnant wife's kid. And you do stuff like that. But in Australia, they do that, but without the FISA warrant. So they just come like, you fucking trying to go to a protest on Facebook, prison for 30 years, motherfucker. So it's actually like that, but then nicer beaches and less African Americans. So there's less violence. So that's really, you take your pick. Take your pick.
True. Thank you. Alex Scott Thompson corrected me. Alton Sterling, who I always mix these two up. He got shot. That was the guy who is selling his mix CD down in Louisiana and got shot while being literally dominated by two policemen. And the one cop pulled out his gun, put it right on Alton Sterling's chest and said, stop. And then he pulled the trigger and he fired bullets right into his heart. He killed him there. It was Eric Garner who was selling the Lucy's in New York. So my apologies for mixing up black men. They all look the same. Their names are all the same to me too. Ben George says, people think they are more sophisticated and smart today than when the Constitution was written, yet they still fall for the snake oil. Get jabbed, fool. I will not. I don't get jabbed. I'm really frustrated because this is the first year that I think the flu shot would have been a good idea. Because this is the strain of flu that ran through my family that was covered in the flu shot. I know that because someone got the flu shot and they didn't get this specific flu. And I'm like, God damn it. This would have been the one time to get it. Every other time, I never get the flu shot. I fucking hate it. Chad says, how can January 6th be an insurrection? Even if a tank was there in the office, would they take over the government? No guns from far right. How's that an insurrection? It's not an insurrection. They just keep saying it's an insurrection. No one was charged with insurrection. No one's been found guilty of insurrection. There's an insurrection fucking federal statute that anyone could be charged with and no one has. The closest it got is like conspiracy to sedition. They didn't even get conspiracy to insurrection. They got conspiracy to sedition on, I think, the like head of the Proud Boys or head of the Oath Keepers, who got like 20 years. Kaya Rennell says, Rip Ascend will ship you loose cigarettes. Well, there you go. Jesus Christ. All right, guys. We're going to pop off of YouTube here. Thank you for joining me. We're going to be on Rumble exclusively. I'll save that announcement for later. We're going to be on Rumble exclusively in 25 seconds here. And then I'll step away for a minute and then we'll get back to the show and we'll soldier on. Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube, if you want to follow on Rumble, if you want to watch over on Rumble, please do. The link is in the description. It's also in the pinned chat on YouTube. Other than that, click the thumbs up on your way out, you bigots. We'll see you then. Peace. Peace.